My name is Lauren Mitchell, and I was 32 years old when I learned I'd been living my life as someone else's insurance policy. From the outside, I look like the one who had it together. I work in software, stable salary, decent benefits, the kind of job where people joke about me being the reliable one. I bought my condo 3 years ago, all in my name. I pay my own bills. I have a retirement account that I actually contribute to. I have a dog, Daisy, who thinks I orbit her, not the other way around. And until that Sunday, I had a boyfriend. Connor, 29, with his easy smile and charming laugh, and the kind of face that photographs well from every angle. He'd been living in my condo for 6 months. He kicked in for some utilities. We split groceries. It was a normal, cozy setup, the kind that looks like the start of a life together. That morning, he had brunch plans with his friends at a trendy place downtown with outdoor seating. I was supposed to go play volleyball with some coworkers, but when the game got canceled last minute, I thought, why not surprise him? Grab a coffee together after he's done. Maybe sit in the sun for a bit. I parked across the street from the restaurant, sunglasses on, hair pulled up in a messy ponytail. Daisy was at home, still snoozing in her dog bed, the apartment exactly as we'd left it. I spotted Connor's table right away, 4 of them on the patio, mimosas, sunglasses, that particular kind of loud laugh people use when they want to be seen. I stepped off the curb, starting to cross the street, when his voice sliced clean through the traffic noise. "So what's the deal with you and Lauren?" one of his friends asked. "Is this getting serious or what?" I wasn't close enough to see faces yet, but I could hear every word. The sound carried perfectly. Connor laughed. Not the laugh he used with me when we were curled up on the couch watching terrible reality TV. The other one. The one that always felt a little polished, performed. "Honestly," he said, "she's perfect on paper. Good job, nice place, treats me well, but she's basically my backup plan." The world narrowed to a pinpoint. I kept walking because my body hadn't gotten the memo that my heart had stopped. "Backup plan," his friend repeated, delighted. "Yeah," Connor said. "My ex is moving back in a few months. Sophie, from Seattle, we've been talking again. I'm not giving up a comfortable situation while I wait to see what happens. You know?" They all laughed. Someone said, "Smart, man. Keep your options open." I stopped in the middle of the crosswalk. Cars honked. I didn't move. I just stood there, the words echoing in my head like they'd been carved into bone. Backup plan. There was hurt, yes. A hot, raw slice that made my eyes sting. And underneath that, anger, thick and rising. But mostly, there was this strange, clear calm, like someone had wiped condensation off the glass of my life, and I was finally seeing the outline of what had always been there. The way he'd go quiet whenever Sophie's name came up, the late-night texts he'd angle away from me out of habit, the vague way he talked about our future, like it was written in pencil and hers in ink. Everything I'd smoothed over in my mind suddenly lined up, sharp and undeniable. I walked the rest of the way across the street, my movements weirdly steady. My hands trembled a little, but my steps didn't. Connor's back was to me. His friends were facing my direction. One of them saw me first, eyes going wide. She elbowed him under the table. He turned. The color drained from his face. "Oh my God," he said, half standing. "Lauren, what are you doing here?" I smiled. It felt like it belonged to someone else. "I came to surprise you," I said. I heard enough to realize I should be surprising myself instead. His friends went awkwardly silent. One of them took a very long sip of mimosa. "Baby, listen," Connor said quickly. "That came out wrong. I was just joking around." "No," I cut in. "You weren't." I looked at his friends, at their half-curious, half-guilty faces, then back at him. "I'm nobody's backup plan," I said quietly, but my voice didn't shake. "We're done." He blinked fast. "What? Lauren, come on, don't be dramatic. Sit down, we'll talk about this." "You know exactly what this is about," I said. "Good luck with Sophie. You won't be waiting for her in my home." I turned and walked away. He called my name. Chairs scraped. Someone muttered, "Dude, what did you expect?" But I was already crossing the street again, my pulse pounding in my ears. By the time I got to my car, my hands were trembling so hard I had to pause before putting the key in the ignition. I sat there, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My lipstick still looked good. My eyes, though, had that glassy, stunned look people get in the moments after a car accident. I took a breath, then another. "Okay," I whispered to myself, "handle it." I drove home. By the time I pulled into my parking spot, Connor had already called 3 times. I ignored every call. The screen lit up with his name, over and over, like a stubborn neon sign. Inside the condo, everything looked exactly the same as it had that morning. The unmade bed, the coffee mug in the sink. Daisy trotted over, toenails clicking, tail wagging, like the universe wasn't collapsing. "Hey, baby," I murmured, burying my face in her fur. "You're the only roommate I'm keeping." Once she settled back into her bed, I made myself coffee and sat down at the dining table with my laptop. If I couldn't control how Connor talked about me, I could control everything that belonged to me. First, the accounts. Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, HBO Max, Wi-Fi, all mine, all paid by me, all used by him. I methodically logged into each one, signed out of all devices, and changed every password. It felt petty and extremely satisfying at the same time. His calls kept coming. I flipped my phone face down. Then I opened a blank document and started typing. The date, the restaurant name, what time I arrived, where he was sitting, which friends were there, the exact words I heard. "She's basically my backup plan. My ex is moving back in a few months. We've been talking. I'm not giving up a comfortable situation while I wait." I wasn't planning on using it in court or anything. I just wanted it written down. Real. Not something I could gaslight myself about later when the loneliness kicked in and nostalgia tried to rewrite history. Next, I pulled out my lease from the folder in the hall closet. My name. Only my name. I'd bought the place before I even met him. He was, legally, just a guest. I stared at that line for a long moment, feeling my spine straighten almost physically. Then I picked up my phone and finally texted him. "You have until Wednesday to pick up your stuff. After that, I'm changing the locks." He called immediately. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. I blocked the number. A few minutes later, my phone lit up with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. His friends, no doubt. I blocked those too. For a while, the condo was quiet. Just the hum of the fridge and the clink of my coffee mug as I set it down. I should have cried by then, probably. Old me would have been curled up in bed, replaying his words, already trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Instead, I felt hollowed out and oddly steady. Like the part of me that used to be terrified of being alone had finally burned away. That evening, as I was half watching some mindless show, my phone buzzed with a text from a name I didn't expect. Eli Turner. We worked in the same building, different departments. We'd grabbed coffee a few times over the past year when our meetings overlapped. He was easy to talk to, funny in a quiet way, and very clearly off limits in my mind because I had a boyfriend. His message was short. "Hey, random question. If you're single now, would you want to grab dinner sometime? Been thinking about asking for a while." I stared at the screen. Outside, the sky was sliding into that soft blue-gray of early evening. Inside, Daisy snored softly, paws twitching in some dog dream. A part of me whispered, "Too soon." Another part, the one that had stood in the middle of a crosswalk and decided to walk away from being a backup, whispered something else. "I don't want to waste any more time on people who don't choose me." My thumbs hovered above the keyboard for a second. Then I typed, "Dinner sounds good. How about tonight?" There was a pause, then, "Really? Yeah, that works. Tell me where to meet you." As I stood up to get ready, a thought flickered through my mind. A tiny seed of foreshadowing I didn't yet understand. Connor thought I was his safety net. He had no idea that the moment he called me his backup, he cut himself off from the only person who'd ever given him a soft place to land. Eli suggested a little tapas place downtown. The kind of spot with dim lighting, mismatched plates, and live music that makes you feel like the main character, even if you showed up with mascara smudges and a day-old ponytail. I stood in front of my closet, towel around my waist, staring at my clothes like they were a multiple-choice test I hadn't studied for. It wasn't about impressing him. Not really. It was about not letting Connor's words be the last ones that defined me. I pulled on dark jeans, a soft black top that made my shoulders look intentional instead of tense, and boots that clicked when I walked, a little eyeliner, lipstick. I stared at my reflection and decided I looked like a woman who had just ended something and was stubbornly still standing. The restaurant was buzzing when I arrived. Eli was already there, leaning against the host stand, hands in his pockets. He straightened when he saw me, and his entire face shifted, like he was genuinely glad I'd come. "Hey," he said, that small, earnest smile that always made people relax around him. "You look—" He paused, searching. "Like you had a day and still won." I laughed, and some of the tightness in my chest loosened. "That's almost weirdly accurate." We got a tiny table near the back. The server rattled off specials. I ordered a glass of red wine. He followed suit. "So," he said once we'd settled, "I know this is not exactly a casual timing situation. If this is too soon, seriously, we can just be two people sharing some overpriced small plates and pretending to be food critics." I looked at him, at the way he watched my face carefully and not my neckline, and something in me softened. "My boyfriend moved out of my relationship this morning," I said. "He just hasn't moved out of my condo yet. That'll be Wednesday." Eli winced. "Ouch." "He called me his backup plan to his friends," I added, "because if we were going to do this, we weren't doing it halfway." While waiting to see if things worked out with his ex, I heard the whole thing. His expression went flat and sharp at the same time. "Wow," he said softly. "Okay, that's brutal." I shrugged, feeling the motion all the way up my spine. It's weird. Part of me wants to crawl into bed and cry for 3 days. The other part feels like the trash took itself out. "Both parts get to exist," he said. "You can mourn the fantasy and still be grateful you saw the truth now, not 5 years into a marriage." I studied him over the rim of my glass. "Do you always talk like a therapist, or is that just a tonight thing?" He grinned. "No, usually I say much dumber stuff. You caught me on a rare wisdom streak." The conversation moved, not easily exactly, but gently. We talked about work, about how he hated open office plans, and how I secretly loved them because it made eavesdropping on chaos easier. He told me about growing up with 2 older sisters who treated him like a living dress-up doll. I told him about Daisy and how she considered any closed bathroom door a personal attack. I didn't tell him about Connor's ex yet, about Sophie from Seattle, but the shape of the story hovered, waiting. By the time we stepped out of the restaurant hours later, the air was cool and smelled faintly like rain. We walked down the street, passing dark shop windows and neon signs. At some point, without fanfare, his hand brushed mine. I could have pulled away. Should have, maybe. If there were rules to these things, I was breaking all of them. Instead, I threaded my fingers through his. He glanced at me, surprised, but didn't comment. Just gave my hand a small, warm squeeze. Eli walked me to my car. We paused by the door, both of us awkward in that way that happens when you're hovering on the edge of a new chapter. "Thank you," I said, for tonight, for not treating me like I'm radioactive. "Lauren," he said quietly, "you're not radioactive. He is. You're just the one who decided to walk out of the blast radius." Something in my chest cracked the tiniest bit, letting hope leak in. We didn't kiss. It felt important not to layer too many new things onto the rubble of the old. But when I drove home, I realized I was smiling for the first time that day. Daisy greeted me like I'd been gone for a year. I knelt and let her lick my face, feeling almost guilty. "Big changes coming, baby," I whispered into her fur, but I promise they're good ones. Tuesday was strangely quiet. Connor's number was still blocked, but he found other ways. Unknown numbers, social media messages from mutuals. I ignored all of them. Wednesday, I took a half day from work. If he had to come get his things, I wanted to be there. Not because I owed him explanations, but because I wasn't leaving my home unsupervised with someone who'd publicly admitted he saw me as temporary. Around 2 in the afternoon, the knocking started. "Lauren, baby, it's me." His voice was too bright, too cheerful. My skin prickled. I checked the peephole. He wasn't alone. Standing beside him, arms crossed over an expensive-looking blouse, was a woman who could only be his mother. Same eyes, same stubborn jaw, same air of offended entitlement that rolled through the door even without it being open. I slid the chain on, then opened the door a crack. "Hi," I said, voice flat. "Your stuff is in boxes in the spare room. You can take them and go." "Lauren," his mother said immediately, stepping forward until the chain caught the door. "This is ridiculous. You can't just throw my son out on the street." "He's not on the street," I replied. "He had an apartment. He chose to let the lease end because he was moving in here, as my guest. That arrangement is over." Connor's eyes darted between us. "Can we please just talk?" he asked. "You didn't give me a chance to explain." "I heard you call me a backup plan while you waited to see if things worked out with Sophie," I said. "That's pretty self-explanatory." His ears went pink. "I was drunk. You know I say stupid stuff when I drink. The guys were just messing around." "So the real you comes out when you drink," I said. "That doesn't help your case." His mother huffed. "He gave up his apartment for you. You owe him more than this childish tantrum. He's been living here. That makes this his home, too." I unhooked the chain and opened the door wider, stepping back just enough to gesture toward the hallway. 5 boxes, neatly labeled, 2 suitcases, some clothes on hangers. I'd even folded everything. "I disagree," I said. "The lease is in my name." The mortgage is paid from my account. The furniture, the TV, the dishes, every big purchase is on my card. I have receipts. Your son brought clothes and a coffee machine. Those are in the boxes. Connor's jaw tightened. What about the bookshelf? The coffee table? We picked those out together. That's our stuff. I picked them, I corrected. You held the measuring tape. I paid. Again, receipts. If you can show me proof you paid for something, you can take it. So far, that's the throw pillows on top of the boxes. His mother's face flushed red. This is abuse. Keeping his belongings, throwing him out with no notice. You're welcome to call the police, I said calmly. I'll show them the lease, the receipts, the texts I've saved. We'll let them decide if I'm abusing him or if he's been enjoying a rent-free stay for 6 months while lining up his ex as an upgrade. For a second, no one spoke. Then Connor dropped his eyes. You didn't have to pack my stuff like I'm some intruder, he muttered. You are now, I said softly. You turned yourself into one the moment you told your friends I was a placeholder. He looked up, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something I hadn't expected. Not charm, not easygoing warmth, but a sharp, frustrated calculation, like he was weighing angles. This is a mistake, he said. You're overreacting. When Sophie gets back, I'm not even sure it'll go anywhere. I was just keeping doors open. Why would you throw away something solid for what might not even happen? And there it was, the core truth, ugly and naked. You just answered your own question, I said. You were keeping me in case she didn't want you. I don't want a life where I'm the consolation prize if someone else says no. His mother scoffed. You're losing the best thing that ever happened to you, she snapped. My son is a good man. No one else will put up with your attitude. I smiled, surprised by how little it hurt. We'll find out, I said. You have an hour. After that, the locksmith comes. They moved past me, Connor yanking at the boxes a little rougher than necessary. His mother muttered under her breath the entire time about ungrateful women and this generation. I stood in the doorway of the spare room, arms crossed, watching. When they were almost done, Connor paused, hand on the last box. Lauren, he said, can we at least get coffee later this week? Talk like adults? You know I love you. I looked at him, really looked at him, the man who used my home and my body as a place to wait while he watched the door for someone else. No, I said. You love having somewhere comfortable to stay while you wait for your ex. That's not love. That's logistics. His mouth opened and closed. For once, he seemed out of words. They left a few minutes later, his mother's parting shot slicing through the air as I closed the door. You'll regret this, she hissed. You had security with him. Don't come crawling back when you realize no one else wants you. The door shut with a soft click. I leaned my forehead against it for a moment, letting the silence soak in. Then I called the locksmith I'd scheduled for 3 o'clock. He arrived right on time. New locks, new keys, a simple exchange of money and metal that felt like cutting a cord. That night, lying in bed, I scrolled through my phone and stumbled on Connor's social media. He'd already made a post, a carefully vague, manipulative paragraph about being thrown out by someone he trusted, about financial control, and cold hearts. The comments were full of sympathy, people telling him he deserved better, little hearts and angry face emojis. If I'd seen that a year ago, I might have spiraled. Tonight I just took screenshots. Let him spin whatever story he wanted. People who knew me would know the truth. People who didn't weren't my problem. My phone buzzed again. Eli, just checking in. How did today go? I stared at the message for a long second, then typed back. Locks changed. Condo is quiet. I feel weirdly okay. His reply came fast. Weirdly okay is a win. You free Friday? I was thinking of testing how many bad puns you can handle over dinner. I smiled into the dark. Connor thought I'd crumble without him. He had no idea that all he'd really done was clear space for someone who actually knew how to choose me. Friday arrived like a held breath. All day at work, I kept expecting fallout. A text from an unknown number, a message from a mutual friend, a surprise confrontation in the parking garage. The ghost of Connor hovered at the edge of every thought, not because I missed him, but because I knew he wasn't the type to accept consequences quietly. But nothing happened. Instead, the world felt startlingly normal. My code review went smoothly. Someone brought cinnamon rolls. The office dog wandered into my cubicle and drooled on my shoe. Life continued. And at 6:30, I found myself standing in the hallway mirror, smoothing my hair for my second date with Eli. Second date. After ending a 1.5-year relationship less than a week ago, the thought should have made me cringe. Instead, it felt like stepping into the air after being underwater too long. Eli picked the place, a little pasta restaurant tucked between two bookstores. The lighting was soft, warm, like everything was dipped in honey. He stood as soon as I walked in, and for a second, I just stared at him. Not because he was unusually handsome, though he was, but because he looked genuinely, wholly happy to see me. There were no games, no calculations, no scanning the door for backup options. Just me. Lauren, he said, smiling, you made it. Of course I did, I said. You promised carbs. He laughed, and the tension in my shoulders slid away a little. Dinner was easy. Conversation flowed like we'd been doing this for months instead of days. He listened, really listened, when I talked about work or Daisy or the weird joy of organizing my own spice cabinet. He didn't reach for his phone once. He didn't mention his exes. He didn't mention mine. It was almost disorienting. At one point, over a shared dessert, he asked gently, "How are you feeling about everything now that the dust is settling?" I hesitated, then honestly, I don't feel heartbroken. I feel stupid, like I should have seen this sooner. Stupid? He repeated. No, you trusted someone who didn't deserve the role. That's not stupidity. That's kindness in the wrong direction. I stared at him, startled. He shrugged. I've been the wrong direction for someone before. I saw that look in her eyes, the one where she kept waiting for me to become someone she'd imagined. It never works. You can't force someone to choose you. I breathed out slowly. So what do you do instead? You choose yourself, he said simply. And then you choose people who recognize your value the moment it's in front of them, not 6 months later when their plan A falls through. My heart stuttered. He wasn't being flirty or poetic or dramatic. He was just telling the truth. When he walked me to my car this time, it wasn't awkward. It wasn't overwhelming. It was warm, familiar, like something that could grow into real comfort if given time. Third date? He asked lightly. I smiled. You're assuming there will be one? Oh, I'm counting on it, he said. You haven't even seen my worst jokes yet. A beat, then. If I kiss you now, he added softly, will it make things complicated for you? I froze. Not because I didn't want him to, but because for the first time in a long time, a man was asking what my boundaries were, instead of testing how far he could push them. I stepped closer. It won't make anything complicated. He kissed me, slow, gentle, careful, like he knew I was carrying bruises he couldn't see. When I got home, cheeks flushed, keys still warm from being in my hand, I saw the envelope taped to my door. My stomach dropped. White envelope, my name written in frantic, sharp handwriting. Connor. Of course. I tore it off and went inside before opening it, Daisy trotting anxiously at my heels. The letter was 2 pages long. The first half was an apology, messy, emotional, the kind people write when they know they've lost control of the narrative. The second half was a plea. He wrote about being confused, about saying things he didn't mean, about feeling pressured by his friends. He talked about his ex Sophie like she was a complicated chapter he was glad to close. And then at the bottom, in slanted letters, I still want us. Please don't throw away everything we built. I love you. Connor. I stood in the middle of my living room, the taste of Eli's kiss still lingering, and read that last line again. I love you. From a man who used me as a waiting room. Daisy whined, picking up on the heaviness. It's okay, I murmured, scratching her head. I folded the letter once, then again, then dropped it in the trash. Saturday. The banging started at 10 a.m. Lauren, open the door! Connor's voice, harder, rough around the edges. Daisy barked, ears pinned back. I checked the peephole. Connor again, alone this time. He had the kind of face people use when they expect to be let in no matter what. I didn't open the door. Go away, I said through the wood. We're done. You're being ridiculous, he snapped. We need to talk like adults. You can't just make a unilateral decision about our relationship because you're upset. I actually laughed. Connor, you called me your backup plan. That was a joke. People say stupid stuff with friends. Why are you blowing this up? I said I was sorry. Behind him, someone rounded the corner. A woman. Tall, dark hair. Stunning. Even through the fisheye lens of the peephole, I recognized her from the photos he'd pretended not to have saved. Sophie. My heart plummeted. She looked annoyed, not heartbroken, not surprised. Just inconvenienced. Connor, she said, bored. This is embarrassing. Can we go? He stiffened. Sophie, not now. She dumped you, I called through the door, voice hardening. 3 days after moving back. You told your friends she was your plan A, and apparently she still isn't interested. Sophie's head snapped toward the door. Excuse me? I continued, unbothered. Your boyfriend forgot to clean up the narrative. Lauren, Connor hissed. Shut up. Sophie narrowed her eyes. Is that true? Connor floundered. No, she's twisting things. Good luck, I said, stepping back from the door. Both of you, leave my property. And then, because clarity sometimes arrives disguised as cruelty, I added, even your plan A doesn't want you. There was a stunned beat of silence. Then footsteps, a quick pivot and retreat. Sophie storming off. Connor chasing after her, voice cracking. Sophie, wait! I watched through the peephole until the hallway was empty. Then I slid the new deadbolt shut with a soft, decisive click. That night, as I curled on the couch with Daisy asleep across my lap, a new thought bloomed quietly in my mind. I had always feared being alone. But now the silence of my condo felt like peace. Like my life was finally mine again. And when my phone buzzed with a text from Eli, I know it's last minute, but I'm making this incredible chicken Alfredo tonight. Want to come over? Daisy too? I didn't hesitate. We'd love to. As I grabbed Daisy's leash, I had no idea that Connor wasn't done. Not even close. Because some people, when they lose control, don't walk away. They escalate, and I was about to learn just how far he was willing to go. I didn't hear from Connor on Sunday. Not a knock, not a text, not a suspicious car lingering outside my building. Instead, for the first time in weeks, I woke up feeling soft. Warm morning light. Daisy snoring with her legs in the air. My muscles relaxed instead of knotted. The quiet hum of the world moving forward without demanding anything from me. Eli had made dinner the night before. Creamy Alfredo that tasted like comfort. Garlic bread that would haunt my dreams in the best way. Daisy curled on his rug like she'd lived there her whole life. We watched a terrible action movie, made fun of the fight choreography, fell into easy conversation. I kissed him goodnight in the doorway, and it wasn't the desperate rebound kind of kiss I'd feared it might be. It was slow, steady, a promise neither of us said out loud. I'm here. I'm choosing this. By Monday morning, I felt a little guilty about how happy I was. But happiness doesn't wait for permission. Monday, the text. It came at 9:27 a.m. from an unknown number I didn't recognize. We need to talk about custody. It's completely unfair for you to keep Daisy from me. I stared at my phone, unblinking. Custody of my dog? My first thought was disbelief, then annoyance, then something colder and heavier, fear. Not for myself, but for Daisy. For the only living thing in my home who had never hurt me. I typed back, fingers steady. Daisy is my dog. Legally. Financially. You don't get custody of an animal you lived with for 6 months. The reply came fast. Too fast. I raised her with you. She's as much mine as yours. I laughed out loud in my office chair. Actually, laughed. Connor had taken her for walks maybe twice. Bought her treats once. Took a picture with her for Instagram to look wholesome. Raising? That belonged to me. I didn't respond. 5 seconds later, another text. I'll pick her up Saturday. We'll do every other weekend. I blinked slowly. Then typed, show up at my home and I'll call the police for trespassing. And if you try to take Daisy, that's theft. Don't test me on this. No reply. Just silence. But it wasn't the peaceful kind anymore. Tuesday, the note. I came home from work to find a piece of paper taped to my door with blue painter's tape. A note. My chest tightened. I yanked it down. In Connor's handwriting, messy, rushed. You're being impossible. Daisy and I have a bond too. Don't force me to involve someone else. We can work something out like adults. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Instead, I took a picture of the note, then tore it in half, then in half again. Inside, Daisy wagged her tail at me, blissfully unaware. I sat on the floor beside her and whispered into her fur, You're not going anywhere. Saturday. The trespassing. By Saturday morning, I expected something. A message, a retaliation, a last-ditch plea. What I didn't expect was the sound of my doorbell ringing insistently while Daisy barked like the apocalypse had arrived. I checked the doorbell camera from my phone. There they were, Connor and his mother, standing on my porch like the final boss of bad decisions. His mother was pointing at my windows, peering inside like she was searching for contraband. Connor stood stiffly, like he was afraid to pick the wrong posture. He started pounding on the door. Lauren, open up, I'm here for Daisy. My blood ran cold. I didn't move. He shouted again, You can't keep her from me. She loves me. In the camera view, his mother crossed her arms. This is ridiculous. She owes you. Owes him. For what? For calling me a placeholder? For using my condo? For planning a future with someone else while sleeping in my bed? No. I dialed the non-emergency police line. Yes, I said, keeping my voice level. This is Lauren Mitchell. I need to report 2 people trespassing at my property. They're refusing to leave. The dispatcher asked for details. I gave them. Calm. Clear. My voice didn't shake. "Officers will be there shortly," she said. 20 minutes later, the pounding stopped. The camera showed Connor's mother looking nervous. He checked his phone, then tugged her arm. They walked away quickly, disappearing from the frame. A few minutes after that, a police officer arrived. I opened the door just enough to speak through the crack. "Are you Lauren?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded. "They were gone by the time I got here, but I watched the footage you sent. You have a case number now. If they return, call immediately." I hesitated. "He's threatening to take my dog." The officer's expression hardened. "The dog is microchipped to you?" "Yes." "Vet records in your name?" "Yes." "Then it's legally yours. If he tries to take her, that is theft. Document everything." Document everything. Connor didn't realize it yet, but every attempt he made to manipulate me was building a case against him. And I wasn't the same woman he'd walked all over a week ago. The calm before the next storm. That night, I curled on the couch while Daisy pressed her warm little body against me. I should have been shaking, or crying, or spiraling. But instead, I felt something else. Clarity. Connor not only wanted to drag me back into his orbit, he wanted ownership, control. He wanted the comfort of being wanted without doing the work of being worthy. Daisy huffed and pawed at my arm until I scratched her belly. "You're staying with me," I whispered, "no matter what he says." My phone buzzed. "Eli, how's your day going?" "I made brownies. You want some, or are you being responsible and doing something boring?" A smile tugged at my mouth. "The only thing I'm responsible for tonight is not eating an entire pan of brownies. We'll be there in 10. When I arrived at his place, brownies still warm on the counter, Daisy sniffing every corner like she was conducting an inspection, Eli studied my face. "You're okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I said, weirdly, yeah. He brushed a hair behind my ear. "Good, because you deserve peace, not chaos." We curled on his couch, Daisy asleep at our feet, and for a moment, a small, glowing moment, I forgot Connor existed. But tomorrow? Tomorrow, Connor was going to remind me just how far he was willing to go when someone told him no. And this time he wasn't coming for my dog. He was coming for my career. Monday. The email. The storm hit at 10:11 a.m. I was in the middle of reviewing a pull request when my boss, a usually unflappable man named Eric, knocked on the frame of my cubicle. "Lauren," he said, voice tight, "can we talk in my office?" My stomach dropped. "Sure." He didn't smile, didn't make small talk on the way, just gestured to the chair across from his desk. I sat. He turned his monitor toward me. "Someone sent me this," he said. This. As if this hadn't already changed the temperature of the room. On the screen was an email. Anonymous. Gmail. No signature. It claimed that I had been harassing my ex, that I was unstable, that I might be dangerous, that my company should be aware of who they employ. I stared, silent. My face grew hot. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Eric watched me carefully. "Is any of this true?" "No," I said immediately. "None of it. This is retaliation." "From whom?" "My ex-boyfriend," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. "He's angry I ended things. I overheard him telling his friends I was his backup plan while he waited for his ex to move back. I broke up with him. Since then, he's shown up at my home, tried to take my dog, threatened me multiple times, and has been sending messages from different numbers. I have documentation." Eric leaned back. "Documentation?" "Yes." I pulled out my phone, opened the folder I'd started after the Brunch betrayal. Screenshots of texts, the trespassing footage from my doorbell camera, the police report number, photos of the note he'd left, the threatening custody messages. Eric's eyes hardened as he scrolled through. "Good," he said. "Keep documenting, and keep these backed up." I swallowed. "Do I need a lawyer?" "If it escalates, yes," he said. "If he continues contacting this company, definitely." He stared at the anonymous email again. "I'm going to be frank with you," he said. "The tone here is off, vague, emotional. It reads like someone trying to create trouble, not someone documenting a legitimate concern. But we take all accusations seriously." I nodded, relief and dread intertwining. "I understand." He turned off the monitor. "I'm not taking any action against you," he said. "But if there are further incidents, bring them to me immediately." I exhaled. Only then did I realize I'd been holding my breath. That afternoon, I go on a fence. I should have gone home, or taken a walk, or cried in the bathroom like a normal person. Instead, I got in my car and drove 3 blocks to Connor's company. The lobby was polished marble and muted colors, the kind of place that looked expensive solely to intimidate. I approached the desk. "Hi," I said. "I need to speak with your HR department about an employee who is harassing me." The receptionist blinked. "Name of the employee?" "Connor Hayes." Something flickered across her face. Recognition, maybe, but she didn't ask questions. She picked up the phone. A few minutes later, the HR manager, a woman in a gray blazer, came downstairs. "Hi, I'm Marissa," she said, offering a tight smile. "Let's talk in my office." I followed her into a glass-walled room. She shut the door. "How can I help?" she asked. I placed my phone, a folder of printed screenshots, and a USB drive on her desk. "Your employee sent false accusations to my employer," I said. "He's shown up at my home. He's tried to take my dog. There's a police report on file, and I have video footage." Her eyes widened slightly. "You have video?" "Yes," I said. "Doorbell camera. He came to my home demanding custody of my dog. He refused to leave. I called the police." I slid over the printed screenshots, the police report, the threatening texts. Marissa read everything slowly, carefully. Her expression tightened more with each page. "This is concerning," she said. "Deeply concerning. Thank you for bringing this to us." "I'm not trying to get him fired," I clarified. "But he attempted to sabotage my job because I ended a relationship. He needs to understand that has consequences." She nodded. "We take out-of-office harassment very seriously. You've provided thorough documentation." She gathered the papers and stacked them with precision. "We will investigate," she said, "and appropriate action will be taken." I left feeling shaky. Not the weak kind of shaky, but the adrenaline kind. The I finally stood up for myself kind. Connor wanted a war. He didn't realize I'd learned how to fight cleanly, professionally, and with receipts. The wine bar, and the friends who think they know your story. Friday night, Eli and I went to a wine bar. It was the kind of place with soft jazz, dim lights, and tables spaced far apart, perfect for pretending the world wasn't full of people trying to cause chaos. We were halfway through a shared cheese board when I saw them. 3 women, dressed up, talking animatedly. Connor's friends, the same ones from Brunch. Recognition hit their faces like a slap. They huddled quickly, whispering. One, the ringleader with sharp eyeliner and sharper opinions, peeled away and stormed toward our table. She didn't smile. "Well, that was fast," she said, arms crossed. I set my wine down calmly. "Not tonight." "No, actually tonight," she snapped. "You destroyed Connor. He's devastated. And you're just out here flaunting your new boyfriend like nothing happened?" Eli raised a brow. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" "A friend," she said, emphasis dripping with judgment, "of the woman she abused and threw out." I snorted. "Abused?" She glared at me. "He said you controlled everything, that you humiliated him, that you treated him like a guest in his own home." "It was my home," I said, "because it belonged to me." My voice stayed even, but Eli's hand brushed mine under the table, steady, grounding. She scoffed. "You kicked him out with no warning, stole his dog, got him in trouble at work." "The dog is mine," I interrupted coldly. "Microchip, vet records, adoption papers, all mine." "And he didn't get in trouble at work," Eli added, voice calm. "He lied to her employer to sabotage her career. She reported it because it was harassment." The friend blinked, thrown. "No," she said weakly. "He wouldn't—" "Look," Eli said, leaning forward slightly. "You're basing your outrage on one side of a story, a side he curated. But calling someone your backup plan while waiting for your ex to move back? That isn't love. That's selfish." She flushed bright red. "You're both awful," she spat. "Connor deserves better." Eli smiled, sharp, polite. Then maybe he should have treated someone better. She turned on her heel and stormed back to her friends. I exhaled slowly, pulse pounding. Eli squeezed my hand. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, surprisingly. Because the truth was simple. A week ago, her words would have gutted me. Now, they barely scratched the surface. Monday, the lawyer. I sat across from the attorney, a middle-aged woman with a calm, surgical demeanor. I laid everything out. The Brunch betrayal, the note, the trespassing, the dog custody claim, the anonymous email. She listened without interrupting. "You've documented everything well," she said at last. "You have grounds for a cease and desist letter, potentially a restraining order if he escalates." "I don't want his money," I said, "or revenge. I just want him to leave me alone." "That's exactly what a cease and desist is for," she replied. "It draws a clear legal boundary. Crossing it has consequences." "How much?" $300 to draft and send. I nodded. "Do it." She smiled. "Good choice." The letter goes out. The letter went out Thursday. He signed for it Friday morning. And that evening, glorious, beautiful silence. No calls, no messages, no knocks, no emails. Like someone had finally muted the noise. Eli came over for dinner that night. We made pizza, badly, and laughed until Daisy barked at us for being too loud. We curled up on the couch afterward, and he rested his hand over mine. "You look lighter," he murmured. "I feel lighter," I said. He kissed my hair. "Good." I didn't know then that the quiet wasn't the end. It was just the eye of the storm, because Connor wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. He was about to make his biggest mistake yet. The storm didn't roar back all at once. It started with a whisper. The first hint came 2 weeks later, when my boss, Eric, asked me to step into his office again. His expression wasn't angry, but it wasn't neutral either. "Another email came in," he said quietly. "Same accusations, same burner Gmail, but this time, it was sent to 3 executives." My stomach clenched. "And," he continued, "our IT director noticed something. One email was sent from a public Wi-Fi network, a cafe. And your ex posted an Instagram story from that cafe within minutes of the timestamp." I stared. It was almost laughable, the level of his stupidity, the arrogance, the belief that consequences were optional for him but mandatory for me. Eric folded his hands. "We can't ignore this anymore. This is harassment, and it's affecting our workplace. Our company attorney will be sending him a cease and desist." My breath finally left my lungs. "Thank you." But deep down beneath the relief ran a thread of exhaustion. Connor wasn't reaching out because he loved me. He was reaching out because he couldn't stand not being the one in control. And now, he was losing that control. The blocked number call. That night, my phone rang from a blocked number. I usually ignored those, but something in my gut told me to pick up. I answered. Before I could speak, Connor's voice slammed through the line. "You're really letting your company sue me over a few emails?" I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. "Connor, you tried to destroy my job." "It was a mistake," he snapped. "I was hurt. I wasn't thinking straight." "No," I said. "You were thinking perfectly clearly. You meant to cause damage. You made deliberate choices." "I can't afford a lawyer," he said, his voice cracking. "This will ruin me." "Then," I said, quiet but sharp, "you should have thought of that before you tried to ruin me." A thick, angry silence. "You're heartless," he whispered. "Sophie was right. You only care about yourself." I laughed once. Cold. "Sophie dumped you 3 days after moving back. Don't use her as a shield." He inhaled sharply. I ended the call and blocked the number. For good. His job. The beginning of the end. A week later, I got a message from a mutual acquaintance who worked at Connor's company. HR finished investigating. He's on a performance improvement plan. Technically, it's not punishment, but everyone knows it's step 1 toward termination. Apparently, using company time and property to harass someone violated their ethics code. He'd done exactly what he accused me of. He sabotaged himself. He complained to friends that I weaponized HR against him. But he forgot the first rule of weaponry. He fired the first shot. His friend group collapses. Then came the part I didn't expect. The ringleader from the wine bar, the woman who'd confronted me, sent me a message. It started with, "I owe you an apology." I almost didn't open it, but I did. She wrote that Connor had lied to all of them, told them I'd kicked him out for wanting independence, told them I was controlling, that I'd kept him from his friends, that I'd threatened to keep his dog out of spite. She wrote, when the Brunch story came out, and the emails, and the police report, we realized he'd lied, a lot. "I'm sorry for how I treated you. It didn't fix anything, but it loosened another thread binding me to the past. Sophie returns and destroys his last fantasy." Then someone sent me a screenshot. Sophie, the ex he'd been waiting for, the woman he'd planned his emotional exit strategy around, had moved back for work, not for him. 3 days into her return, she dumped him. He'd apparently made some grand gesture. She rejected him publicly. Her words posted vaguely online. Sometimes the person who built you up in their fantasy never bothered to grow in reality. The comments weren't sympathetic this time. People had started connecting dots. And Connor was running out of places to hide. The real revenge. Not legal, not petty, just living. 3 months after the brunch, Eli had slowly, quietly become the steady thing in my life that I never knew I deserved. He didn't push. He didn't hover. He didn't demand emotional labor to soothe his ego. He showed up, he listened, he made space. Somewhere between the homemade pesto pasta, the late-night walks, and the dozens of times he insisted on helping me carry groceries because your biceps deserve rest, he became more than a rebound. He became home. One Friday night, after we'd finished dinner at my place, Eli stood in the doorway of the spare room, the room that used to hold Connor's boxes. "This would make a perfect office," he said casually, "if I ever, spent more time here." My heart gave an unexpected flutter. A week later, he moved in. No drama, no power struggle, no threats. just two people choosing each other on purpose. Daisy adored him. Sometimes it felt like she loved him more than she loved me. I wasn't even jealous. I was grateful. The final turning point. One night, while Eli and I were cooking dinner together, him chopping onions, me stealing bites of cheese, I paused and said, "You know, if I hadn't walked away that day, I never would have had this." Eli looked up. "Had what?" "This," I said simply. "Peace. Real partnership. Someone who sees me as their first choice." He set the knife down, wiped his hands on a towel, and kissed my forehead. "Thanks for being brave enough to walk away," he said softly. "You made it possible for us." My eyes pricked with tears. Not sad tears, grateful ones. Because he was right. Epilogue. The only choice that mattered. Connor? He drifted into the background. His job spiraled. His friends pulled away. His fantasy crumbled. His mother kept blaming everyone except him. He never apologized again, not sincerely. But it didn't matter, because the real revenge wasn't the HR complaint, or the cease and desist, or the silence that finally followed. The real revenge was simply, I was happy, actually deeply, quietly happy. And Connor, who spent a year and a half treating me like a placeholder, was alone. People say I moved on too fast, that I should have stayed single longer, that maybe Eli was a rebound. They weren't there when I heard someone call me a backup plan. They weren't there when I chose myself for the first time. And choosing myself led me to someone who chose me back. Not as an option, not as a backup, not as a comfortable situation, but as the only choice. The real upgrade wasn't a new boyfriend. It was my new standard. And once you raise your standards, you never go back to being someone's maybe.